0 to 60 can define a performance car, but it's the fastest 60 to 0 that's the aim of Terox brakes. From road cars to race cars, circuits, special stages, or the autostrada, nothing reduces speed like Terox brakes. Italy gave the world the art of Da Vinci and Michelangelo. Terox has given drivers the art of stopping. For more information and to acquire your own masterpiece, visit terox.co.uk.
Yes, it's me, Mike Stone, and this is the Backseat Driver Podcast.
I'm sat in the National Centre for Motorsport Engineering at Bolton University with the Director Mark Busfield. It's safe to say somebody who should probably have been working in the world of agriculture has had one of the most spectacular careers in motorsport of a lot of people. It's quite fascinating, is Mark's story. Mark, welcome to the Backseat Driver Radio Show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Now, from making somebody a cup of tea one afternoon, how did you go from agriculture to at times, the absolute pinnacle of motorsport?
Okay, so it's a long story. So let's start at the beginning. When I was back at school, I was doing sixth form, and the idea was my career path was to take me to agricultural college, and I'd applied to go to Askham Bryan. I was tinkering in the garage one afternoon, and a friend of my father's came round, a guy called Tony Fall, who was a works rally driver, and at that time was head of the Opel Motorsport department in Germany. So my father was out, so I made him a cup of tea, and he watched me faff around in the garage for a good hour, and I was fixing the lawnmower, bike, whatever it was. Can't remember. But anyhow, he went in when my father arrived and explained to Dad that they were looking for an apprentice for the rally team in Germany, and would Mark consider potentially moving to Germany. So the subject was born at dinner that night, that Tony was looking for an apprentice and would I consider, which would mean leaving school early. So the answer was, of course, absolutely. So the only prerequisite that was needed was a driving license. So this was in December. My birthday wasn't until April. So 6 days after my birthday, I took my test and left to Germany a day after that. And the rest is history. Right. So I never ever looked back, really. I mean, it was the best opportunity. Very fortunate. I was given the chance to be an apprentice for a world team. At that time, the World Rally Championship was very much televised. It was very much in the limelight. It was the highlight of the start of Group B. So we were working on the Manta, but the Quattro came along, then the Turbo, then the Peugeot, then the Lancia. So yeah, very, very, very interesting times. And it really, at that time, starting as an apprentice, I made a lot of tea. So I was obviously proved I was good at that, but progressed as we moved back to the UK with what was GM Dealer Sport, doing British Championship and some European and world events with Jimmy McRae and Russell Brooks, and then doing into the World Championship later with the Astra, with Malcolm Wilson, Louise Aitken Walker and such like. So yeah, fantastic times. Really, really enjoyable.
Now, the interesting thing was you mentioned Jimmy McRae there. Also, Harry the Man Vatanen, the late, great Henry Toivonen.
Yeah.
So you could appreciate what the drivers required from their cars. They strapped you in the co-driver's seat with all three to make sure you knew what was required. I mean, what was it like riding with these guys?
Mental. So if I go back to, I joined the team. We'd spent 2 or 3 weeks in Germany preparing the cars. And the first event for me was the Acropolis in '83, which was the first ever event for the Manta 400. Which back then was sponsored by Rothmans, so it was the Rothmans livered cars. Prior to any World Rally, there was like a precursory test venue, so we would go to a private shakedown, for want of a better word, and we would put all the parts that we knew were going to change during the event into a car, do a few kilometres, then change the oil, so gearboxes and axles. Back then, they were using rally cars for recce cars, so the Manta was the rally car for the event, but we got a load of Ascona 400s as well, so there was probably 7 or 8 rally cars at this venue. We were changing components and just running them in. So we'd done that for pretty much all the day. It was getting towards the end of the day, and a couple of the guys said it would be a good idea to put Mark in with Jimmy just so he knows to make sure the wheel nuts need to be tight. So we jumped in the car, and I think there was obviously a bit of a note to Jimmy, try and make Mark sick. We want to see what we had for dinner again. So we were driving around what was an old quarry with a narrow road around it, and Jim drove a right-hand drive car, so I was sat on the passenger side, and he was going clockwise around the quarry, so it wasn't so bad. He got the drop on his side. So off we set and go around, and I was quite impressed. I thought, yep, I was going to be a rally driver one day, then realised immediately I was never going to be a rally driver. Because as good as I thought I was, I could see I was definitely a long way from the mark. So we got back and I'd sort of held my dinner in. I was quite pleased with myself, and then hung around, and then there was a couple more runs. And then the German mechanics were looking after both Harry and Henry, came back over, and they could see I was a bit squeamish with Jim. Said, do we want to put Mark in with Harry? Of course, don't need to ask me twice. Like, Harry Vatnam was my childhood hero. So yeah, of course, I'll have some of that. So you jump into the passenger seat. He was left-hand drive, so I'm now hanging over the edge. And he sets off in a much more flamboyant style than Jim. And I still couldn't believe at the time just how quick the cars were going compared to the fact we're about to do the Acropolis, which was a car killer of an event. So it was, to me, we're wearing the cars out before the start, but that was my naivety of the time. So anyway, he does his run, which certainly the bits that Jim slowed down for, Harry took a lot quicker. And there was a little bit at the bottom. We went through a ravine that Jim slowed right down for. Harry went through it in sort of third gear, and we got a little bit airborne. So I got back. It was quite more, it was a lot different driving style, but it was nonetheless quite an experience. Got back, managed to keep my dinner in, so I was really quite pleased. The other mechanics had obviously desperately wanted to see my dinner again. So we left it to the last run of the day, and I was packing up everything away, and it was like, oh, there's one more run to do, jump in with Henry. So, and Henry had obviously, I think, been briefed, we need to see Mark's dinner. And all I'm doing is wear a pair of shorts and a T-shirt, and all I've got is an intercom on. Nothing else, no helmet, no protection.
Well, that's how these guys used to do these rallies back then.
The driver was wearing a pair of plimsolls, and a pair of shorts on, and a T-shirt as well. There was no one wearing overalls. So off we set, like from a standing start. It was like a special stage, and we got to the bit at the end, which Jimmy had slowed down for. Harry had gone through in third gear. Henry took it, sort of, from my memory, as fast as he could. We seemed to be flying for quite a long time before we landed. He did a handbrake turn and then came back the other way. And as we arrived back into the paddock, I had to rush behind the truck. And I saw my dinner again, but I kept it from the rest of the team.
Now, from Opel, you've progressed through a lot of teams as work has taken you through the sport. Because besides rallies, you've done touring cars, you've done world touring cars, you've done GT racing.
Yeah.
Just talk us from bouncing through a quarry, with the late great Henry Toivonen.
Yeah.
Where did it all go right?
Okay, so it depends what you call right and wrong. So I moved back to the UK from Germany when the Rothmans contract was lost, and we'd set up as dealer sport. So I continued to develop as an apprentice, and eventually became like a lead mechanic for the team on the Astra project. By that time, it was initially with David Metcalf, and then laterally with Malcolm Wilson. And Eurosport, which is what we were then called, was doing a series of European and World Rally rounds, as well as the British Championship. So we did that until 1990, and at the end of 1990, the Astra had kind of fulfilled its platform, and everybody was going to the Group A route with World Rally Championship, and you needed a four-wheel drive car. So Opel had tried to develop alternative four-wheel drive, and they'd played with the Cavalier and then with the Calibra as that came on. But I'd realised that opportunities lied elsewhere. So I actually left the team in 1990 and went to work for the local Audi franchise in Harrogate, to me as assistant serviceman. We're a Volkswagen and Audi dealer.
It seemed quite equitable, that, wasn't it, working for a dealership?
Yeah, it was interesting. So what that did, it was one of those experiences I'm so glad I did, because it was a life-changing moment. So that was the point where you no longer were a mechanic and you became a manager. And they were very good. They'd supported you with a load of dealer courses and such like, which gave you the management styles and the interaction you needed with customers and such like. And I did that for
Not like talking to a driver.
No, exactly. But the interesting was, because obviously you understood the fundamentals of the car. You were looking after a workshop. You knew what was going on with everything. And as I say, I did that for a year. And then the opportunity came up. MSD had formed from what was the GM team. Yeah. And David Whitehead, who was the owner of the team, had asked me if I'd go down and act as, in essence, workshop foreman. So it was an opportunity not to be, and as I say, they were at that time looking at the Cavalier 4x4, Calibra 4x4. We then involved in doing an F2 Astra rally car and other various projects. So there was lots going on. And I went back there as workshop foreman, and then progressed to operations manager, workshop manager, and such like. And I continued to do that for a number of years. And we really grew the business as a manufacturing operation. So from being a very small team that was using external suppliers, we set up our own machine shop, our own fabrication department. We then started to do composites, and it grew and grew and grew. And we then started to get involved with the projects. We got the Honda for British Touring Car Championship. Yeah. We then did the Vectra Challenge. And, we went from a group of 4 or 5 people to 40 or 50 people very quickly. I say very quickly, over a few years. So I was responsible for all of that, and it was a completely different skill set. And at that point, I realized I need to give myself some more training. I got to the point where, this was beyond a college or anything else. So I then started to go to night school to learn about management technique, just in time management systems.
Because just putting it, running a rally team and running a touring car team, there will be similarities, but there will also be differences because of, want a better term, the discipline. You've gone from a stage car, something that multi-surface, to something that runs on a circuit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think, in essence, what happens when you're running a team, it really doesn't matter what the discipline is. You just have the engineers that are capable of doing that. You're responsible for the budget, for employing you've got the right staff and personnel, making sure everybody's got a brief and a plan and working to it. And then the discipline of what happens in the field or on the race day or the rally day, it becomes a different set of circumstances.
Because you'll go from, shall we say, a headquarters, you're into a pit lane. Now, everything has to go, or there'll be a list of what has to go from the headquarters to the pit lane, because you've still got to be able to do the exact same job in a pit lane that you could do in the headquarters.
Yeah, no, I think the interesting thing, which I personally find, having done all my background work in the World Rally Championship, and in essence, you are two men in a van on a hillside with a driver and a co-driver, and whatever bits you've got in the van.
And a ground sheet, if you're lucky.
Well, we didn't have a ground sheet. It got very dusty. So you had to make do with what you've got. And, there's many a time where we've, resourced, cut down a bit of fence post or an old bit of gate and welded it into the car because you had to do. Yeah. Otherwise, this was before Super Rally. You retired, you were going home.
And there's the stories of people borrowing axles off.
Yeah.
Members of the public's car to stick on the rally car.
Exactly. A famous video from the Scottish back with Barry Hinchcliffe. Massive. Yeah, when they borrow guys could pre-axle to put underneath that. Yeah, I mean, those I've experienced. Go back to the World Rally Championship when we were running with the Hyundai team with the Accent. We were doing an event. It was very wet. It was Portugal, and we had the wiper motor was mounted to the floor of the Accent on a bracket, and it was pouring with rain. It was like torrential. Anyway, the bracket failed, so the wiper motor was free to roam. So Kenneth, in his innovative way, decided he was going to while he was waiting for the stage control, whittled down some sticks and some tie wraps with the kit he had in the car and made this super Lagira supporting bracket to hold the wiper motor. He came into service and the one job was, look at the wiper motor, I think we need to make a new bracket for it. The engineer of the time looked in, he said, we couldn't do anything better than that. So we left him with a wooden wiper motor bracket for the rest of the event, and it never failed. It was absolutely perfect. So, but it is that sort of innovative way of just doing what you can do with what you've got. And I think the good thing was, from the rallying perspective, where you had everything you needed, when you take that ethos then to circuit racing, which was then not as professional as it is now, whereby, you would have had all your parts pre-run and everything else. Taking that to circuit racing then raised the level of circuit racing as well. And certainly when I was doing British touring cars in the 1990s, and there was so much money being spent, there was 8 manufacturers doing the championship, and they were all out to get the fastest time. You wanted to be the quickest at the end of the test day on CFAX.
Yeah.
You were all throwing tyres to get purple sector to be on CFAX at the end of the day because that was selling cars. But that sort of rallying background really did stand you in good stead.
Yeah.
And I think there was no detriment to that. And, it really did raise the professionalism. Unfortunately, all it does, and the more money you can spend, if there's an undefined amount of money, you spend more money. Yeah. And it just raises budgets up, which then unfortunately forces manufacturers to go elsewhere because it's too expensive for them.
Yeah. Because ultimately there's somebody sat there, a bean counter, shall we say. Look, somebody said, here, hang on.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've had a situation. Obviously, our budget when I was looking after touring cars for RML. So that was RML designed and built the car in conjunction with NME, who were based at Didcot, and they were overseen by Alec Poole. And we had our budget to work to. I was responsible for that budget, and we knew what we had. And tyres was an aside from that Didcot picked up that bill. And if it was at a test session and it needed another 2 sets of Michelin tyres, Alec Poole would just say, let's go purple sector. We just go chasing for it, and we just keep throwing tyres at the car. Yeah. But so is everybody else.
Yeah.
And, back then you've got 8 manufacturers, all with 2 cars. That's 16 cars just eating tyres quite quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it does make you realise why limits have been put on things.
Yeah. No, I mean, it has to do because as I've seen, my cyclic time around motorsport has been following where there's been manufacturer programs, and manufacturer programs are based on what's in vogue at the time. So I started in the World Rally Championship because World Rally Championship got the TV coverage that you were looking for. And many manufacturers are doing that. Unfortunately, after Henry Toivonen's death was kind of the icing on the cake where everybody realised Group B was out of control.
So, I mean, the Group B cars were staggeringly spectacular.
They were.
I mean, they were actually faster than Formula One cars.
Yeah, no, well, allegedly, and I don't know how true it is, they say that Lancia did a testorill with Henry driving the car on slick tyres. And purportedly, that if his time around the track was to be correct, it would have put him on 4th place on the grid for the Grand Prix that year.
Yeah.
Which is mindless. I mean, if that is true, and there's no reason to not believe it because of what you know from what the cars had and the performance that they were running on that car, it is quite likely.
And there's a story about Michel Moutin at Sport Quattro being asked to slow down for they were filming it, and the two, what were regarded as two of the world's fastest helicopters, couldn't keep up with it down at Forest Stage.
Yeah, no, yeah, well, I can believe it. Yeah, I can believe it. And the cars were ludicrously quick. And the problem was, it wasn't the problem with the cars; it was the problem the spectator controlled. So it was.
I think it's Italy. Was it Italy where it was a mark of bravado if you could touch one?
No, I know. It was crazy. I mean, I remember servicing on these events, and you physically couldn't get from one stage to the other because the cars were parked so poorly everywhere. You know, we've had a situation where we've had to drive through. We had quite a large van, and some of the police have actually asked us to push our way through. And you've pushed through cars, actually pushing them out of the way with your van. But the police are actually waving you through because they're trying to clear the road. So you get there and try and tell your team manager, I'm very sorry about the damage to my bumpers, but I've got here.
Yeah.
And you know, you'd have to have another story about it. But yeah, madness. Absolutely. But yeah, the car performance was getting so quick, and inevitably, as was the case that's happened in Portugal, there'll be contact with the car and spectators, and there'll be fatalities. And you know, fatalities for spectators and then fatalities for drivers, something had to be done. But there was a knee-jerk reaction, and Group B was killed overnight.
The one thing I would say, though, I know the spectators are out of control. It showed that era's passion for the sport.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It was, I think, probably F1 was struggling to come anywhere near that level of popularity.
Yeah, no, it was. And again, it was down to the television, the media. It was a massive.
And the drivers were stars, weren't they? They were proper people.
Yeah. And there was a link to a certain degree from the cars to what you can buy in the showroom.
Yeah.
The manufacturers behind it. You know, there was a genuine belief that you were buying a product that had been proven in the World Rally Championship. Yeah. So it worked for everybody. Nowadays, I mean, Group B cars started to look very dissimilar from the road car. And nowadays, you know, a WRC car looks absolutely nothing like a road car.
Well, I said it actually looks like something off a computer game.
Yeah.
There is no, apart from a vague passing hint in a bad light, if you squint, it looks like the thing in the showroom. There's no relationship whatsoever.
No, I mean, you look at it as an engineering exercise. The cars are absolutely wonderful, but they are completely different to the road car. There's no actual record. Whereas a touring car does at least look like the road car with a wing on the back. So there is a similarity.
So where did it all progress from there? Because, I mean, you've moved on. You've never really left motorsport. I know you've said you've tried to leave motorsport, but motorsport won't let you leave.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's interesting. So having done World Rally and then British Touring Cars, so in 1990, I'd left MSD as operations manager and gone to RML. And the only reason was I'd wanted to be a team manager. I really wanted to do that one thing. That was my aim in life.
You'd have aimed to wear a white shirt and have a clipboard, haven't you?
Exactly. Yeah, and a set of headphones.
It was a set of headphones.
Yeah. It was kind of like my making. So it was one thing you wanted to do. And unfortunately, the opportunity never came with MSD. David was reluctant to let me go. He wanted me to stay as operations manager. We had a team manager at the time. So I went to RML and joined the Nissan team, which was a really, really wonderful time. I mean, it's one of the best times of my life. So you join a team that proved the year before the car was competitive. They had some reliability issues. They got a very good driver lineup. And at that time, touring cars was very much under the spotlight. So we started with what was proved to be quite a quick car. And we actually won the team's manufacturer's title, but we eluded the Drivers' Championship. Ricard won that with the Volvo.
Yeah.
So 99, we came back. We really had all guns blazing. We had a driver change. So we changed Anthony to Laurent, who joined the British Touring Car Championship for the first time. He joined us from Peugeot, but came with good provenance and was a very, very quick driver. And he really made David dig deep as well. And the two kind of like bounced off each other, but didn't. There was quite a bit of conflict, but it was an interesting time as somebody trying to hold all that together and get the car to perform on track.
Because what you've not got to do is tell your two drivers do not, and it happens all the time, do not eliminate one another.
No, I know. Yeah, the team orders, not team orders scenario is always the worst thing, particularly when you've got two drivers that want to be at the front.
Yeah.
And, you know, you've got to make sure that both drivers are sharing data and we're learning from each other, and you are making sure you are staying ahead of everybody else and not fighting against each other, which is sometimes also very difficult. But so, yeah, we finished the championship in 99 and had won everything, including the Drivers' Championship. And then what happened is that cyclic collapse of a championship. Nissan was spending a lot of money. Peugeot had already struggled and they said they were going to pull out. Audi had already left. So all of a sudden, you've got this 8 manufacturers became 3.
Yeah.
And a championship just fell apart purely on the basis of the fact it was so expensive. And Nissan would have only continued if everybody else had. Like, we've won everything we can. All we can do is get worse.
Yeah.
So they pulled.
And I think the thing is then when you start to try and pull privateers in, the privateers suddenly realise why the works teams have dropped out, because
well, I mean,
if a works team can't afford it, a privateer team definitely can't afford it.
Well, interestingly, I know John Cleland, he obviously bought his old touring car and obviously tried to race it in historics, but, just finding the parts.
Yeah.
I've got a good friend of mine, Dan Wheeler. He bought an old Nissan that was from 97, an old Reed car, and he's been running that in historics. Again, finding the parts, finding the hardware, they need constant care and attention, and they are very expensive things to run.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just fire up once a year and take out for a spin, because the resonance and everything else, things just shake themselves apart.
Yeah.
And it is the way it is. And all we did back then was you just keep fitting new parts to the car. Yeah. Which, on all those new parts, if you've got new parts, are still now 21 years old.
Yeah. I think the thing with racing cars, lots of racing cars, is the components have, it's a bit like helicopters. They have, shall we say, there's a lifespan on them.
Yeah.
And they have to be replaced, because if you go beyond what you anticipate for it, it might be working when the guy rolls out the pit lane.
Yeah.
It might not be working anymore by the time it gets to the first corner.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we ever developed a new part, and this is rallying or racing, we would normally want to see 1,000 kilometers on that part to prove it's, and you could do as much FEA on it as you wanted to make sure it was okay. We'd actually do dynamically 1,000 Ks. And once
it's 1,000 Ks of like what you would call race or rally speed.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Don't just drive it round for 1,000 kilometers.
Yeah, no, exactly. And likewise, it's say if it was rallying, you do 1,000 Ks on an Acropolis stage, but not on a San Remo gravel stage, a tarmac stage rather. So you'd make sure the car was put through its paces. And what would do, once you'd actually done that, you then obviously sign that off and do it. If we ever had a new part that you knew was performance related, whereby you really could make a significant difference, you'd have to get, theoretically, board level decision. Are we going to run this part on the car because it may fail? Yeah. And what you would probably opt to do, as it has in the case certainly in rallying, you'd put it on one car only. Yeah. So the benefit to the driver, if this works, you're going to get performance advantage. Yeah. But don't come crying to us if your car's parked to the side and it's got broken suspension, which could happen. Yeah. So
I mean, it'll be funny. You do hear this, especially you used to hear yourself in Formula One. Driver B's car has this new part fitted to it. Yeah. Driver A's doesn't. Yeah. And that is the reason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and likewise, you also have the scenario whereby, say in Grand Prix or rally, one car falls by the wayside because that's had a terminal problem. And the chances are the second car could have exactly the same problem because it's done exactly the same duty cycle. And it has happened where 2 cars have parked up on the track or on a special stage, both with the same failure because a component has just not been, subject to that demands it's been put through, and it fails.
It's not be funny. It's a bit like the late great Colin Chapman. He used to, if a race was 70 laps long, don't build a car that will do 71 because you've over-engineered one bit of it.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, that certainly in the heydays of touring cars was the case. We would change hardware from a lifing perspective. We'd be limited to, it would say it has to do 1,000 kilometers, but perhaps we'll change it every 2,000. So as the season goes on, the car hands down is hardware, and we circulate it so many times. It's someone's job to log every lap that every part on that car's done. So that if you take a wishbone, that's actually done 3 races, and its total distance is 400 kilometers, and that has a tag to it. So that because the last thing you want to do is fit a part that's already done 6 races, or if there's a question mark, so if there's been contact on the track, just as a precaution, even if it looks okay, you change the hardware just so as not to have any problems.
The only benefit now is you can sell all these bits you take off as souvenirs and make a profit.
If only I still had them. But consider the amount of parts that we have disposed over the years. And you can see now some of even just from modern sculptures. One year when I was back at MSD, we had Tim Harvey driving for us, and he was very good at damaging dog rings in the gearbox. So we had this bucket of damaged gears. And one of the mechanics thought it'd be an excellent idea, a young guy called Steve. So he welded them all up as a sculpture and made like a gear man. Yeah. And we presented it to Tim at the end of the season party. Here's your gears back.
Now, after all that, you're now Director at the National Centre for Motorsport Engineering here at Bolton University. How did you end up here? And it will seem quite a quiet life in its own way now, won't it?
Well, yes and no. It's interesting. So having looked after these teams for a number of years, and I've obviously been very involved in the recruitment process, and that's recruitment for all team members, including engineering staff. And I've always really struggled to find good engineers, young junior engineers. And it's always nice to have a good case where you've got a good junior engineer who's joined you and progressed with you, and then you've seen them grow and flourish. And I work with many engineers that have gone on to good, done really good things. So it's from that experience of struggling to understand what students had and needed, the opportunity when offered to come and work at a university and grow the graduates who are going to be the engineers of tomorrow with the industry backing, thinking from the employability perspective and what weaknesses I'd seen from the ones that I'd had, it brings a whole different ethos. So yeah, I mean, we're here now. This is the 4th year I've been here, brand new purpose-built facility. And we have a USP, which is on top of all the theory, we let the students actually get involved practically, and we give them internships within industry.
Because the one interesting thing is when you walk into the foyer of this building, you're under no doubt what it's here to do. It's full of racing cars, proper racing cars.
Yeah, no, so we're fortunate in a way. So we have many collaborators and people who support us by loaning us their hardware. So we're very fortunate in a way that we have this opportunity for a diverse range of cars. So we've got loads of things down there, none of which we own, all on loan.
Do you get to race them?
Yeah, we do. So the Ensign project, so we've got Formula One Ensign down there from 1981, which actually won the British Formula One Championship with Jim Crawford, who was a Boltonian. So there's a Bolton link there. We ran that last year in the Masters race at Brands Hatch with Johnny Herbert, and the plan is to race it again this year at Silverstone. So there's a load of students down there at the moment putting that car together. We've had to do a full winter rebuild. So that means taking everything back. All the parts need to be blasted, crack tested, any repairs
so
done.
the students here realise what a rebuild on an F1 car is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no. So, I mean, and it's important that we get the students involved, because the one qualm I had over the employability perspective of graduates, they were coming out with a load of theory and they're very good with a laptop, but they weren't that practical. Sometimes their designs, if they were a design engineer, we once had an engineer who designed, we gave them a part which came with a bracket, and then they made a bracket to suit the bracket. Yeah. Why did you just design the one bracket and throw the other bracket in? I was like, I didn't know I could do that. So it's that thinking outside the box, but also becoming involved. Having a team, and certainly modern day involvement, all teams are small. So even as team, I'm quite happy to arrive at the track, help wash the truck, set up the garage, put the board in, the flooring down, all that stuff that nobody ever sees. But that day of setup.
Plus that all-important thing, the kettle.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the first thing was always get the urn on. So get the urn. And make sure you got some fresh milk, because it's important. There's nothing like a cup of tea from Earl. Even at my age, I'm still good at making tea. In fact, that's one thing throughout my entire career I've done really well is made the tea. Exactly. Tea and coffee.
So everything else, pull down tea sponsorship. I mean, you surely need to be able to get Lancashire Tea or Yorkshire Tea as a sponsor.
Yeah, and I never even really thought about it. Okay. Yeah, it's one thing you'll find in everyone's pit garage. It's one product, as well as oil, you'll find in everyone's garage. Yeah, no, exactly. So no, the burning point was that many didn't want to get their hands dirty, didn't want to be involved, and we're a little bit elitist. So what we try and do, or what we do, is make sure that everyone coming out of here has had the experience and understands cause and effect of change, how their designs can be done, how to manufacture different things. So we try them in all areas. So they understand how to design a car, how to manufacture it, the various manufacturers. You're going to fabricate it, you're going to cast it, you're going to print it, you're going to make it as a composite part, or an element.
I think that's the thing now with modern technology. It appears first on the screen, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Formula Student project is quite interesting. So the students have finished all their assessments now, so they're now fully committed to building a car for the race at Silverstone in July. So they last week welded up the chassis, and that was all done. And now they're obviously putting suspension on the car, but they need to sort out the clevises and the interaction. So they've got all the drawings and they've printed it.
Yeah.
They basically made it a 1-to-1 scale print.
Yeah.
So they actually are doing everything real time, which, I mean, I'd have dreamt of that when I should have done that 35 years ago. Nothing. I mean, we had CAD was cardboard aided design.
Yeah.
Whenever if I go back to my days when we did the homologation for the Calibra, our suspension at that time was actually made by Pilbeam, racing designers, Mike Pilbeam from the Hill Climb days. And quite often he didn't have the original hardware. So I had an engineering blueprint.
Yeah.
And I would actually physically make the part in cardboard,
Yeah.
spray it in black paint and photograph it for the homologation photographs, because you couldn't tell. It was a black and white photograph of a cardboard part.
Yeah.
But if it was a suspension bracket or an engine bracket, whatever it was, you did that and then, yeah, for sure, the real parts would come, but you'd have to do the homologation pictures often before the original thing was. Now, if somebody had given me the option of putting a machine and printing one overnight,
Yeah.
happy days.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. But I'd have never been as good at making cardboard parts as I am now.
No. Well, I mean, the great thing is somebody who comes here can take part or try and work out, if they're capable of, and then learn how to become involved in all aspects of motorsport. Because the one thing you try and get through to people about motorsport, it's not, everybody thinks they should be, if you're in motorsport, you've got to be a driver.
Yeah.
You can't, you're not. Many a time you won't be good enough to be a driver. As you said, you discover you were never going to be a good enough to be
I found out
a
my first time I sat in a car. The 3 people showed me I was very inadequate.
So do you tell people, do you show people, look, this, you have an interest in motorsport, this is probably what going to be your best direction in it?
Yeah, so what we do is by giving them the opportunity and by having the diversity in the course. So we've got 3 years to try and teach everybody regulations, how to design something, what materials you can make it from, how you make it, how to make it go quicker, simulation. I mean, it's a massive amount. And what you tend to find is that because a lot of our students would like to progress into Formula One.
Yeah.
As soon as you get into that discipline, you become a very niche person. So you will become a specialist in hydraulics or aerodynamics or whatever it is.
I don't think people realise this. If you're at the pinnacle, be it Formula One or sports car racing like Le Mans, there are mechanics who specialise in one small part of that.
All areas, exactly. And you do need that. But what you need to do is ensure that once you've made your bed, as in you've made your career path, you're happy with that.
Yeah.
Because you're working for a long time in life. So, if you're going to work for 40 or 50 years, you want to enjoy what you're doing. You want to enjoy there's longevity in that.
Yeah.
And it's also thinking of future-proofing. So, here we are now in this world of change with a greener environment. Yeah, we might have got some DFV Formula One cars down there, but you've also got to consider electric hybridization, range extenders and so on and so forth. So all of that, and no one's really sure. There's obviously, everybody has a personal opinion on which direction we're going to go for the greener environment. The government's pushing us down an electric route. We all know that if everybody had an electric car, many won't be able to charge it.
Yes.
We haven't got the power capacity to do it.
Yes.
Even if you put solar panels on the roof, you're struggling. So there has to be a definitive longer term.
Don't get me going on.
No, don't worry. I don't intend to turn it into green agenda. But what I'm saying is we have to make sure that evolution of the course. So we're launching electric vehicle courses. We have to stay. We can't sit on our laurels and just keep churning the same stuff out year on year because industry's changing. I use printing as an example. We've invested quite a lot in additive suites. And I've seen the benefit myself, and literally, you saw earlier, we had the Fun Cup car down there. So we tested that 2 years ago before the Spa 25. And it was a stonking hot day in beautiful Alton Park, 35 degrees. And the driver came in and he was profusely wet through.
Yes.
And he said, it's really hot in here. So a couple of the students were like, is there any regulations say you can or can't fit a vent? And there was a certain amount of scope. So they decided they were going to fit, in essence, a funnel system with an elbow that came in through from the door mirror. Anyway, they did a design themselves, uninitiated, and I didn't even know about it. Got one of the guys to print it. Can we fit this and try it? Absolutely happy days. They'd initiated it. They fitted it on the car. It was chalk and cheese. Drivers were made up. They even put a little filter on it so it didn't get wasps flying into the car. So it's those sorts of things. If I go back to the days of where you were doing a composite part, you need a pattern maker. You make a wooden butt, and then you'd make a mold from that. And sometimes, to make something like a lamp pod, it could take you, 2 weeks just because of the time it took. If somebody can do your design, you can press the printer on in the evening, come in the morning, but there it is. It's printed. There's your buck. All you need to do is flat it off and make a mold from it. It's incredible.
Now, before we go, you told me one story that you have got to tell the listeners about adjustable differentials. We will finish on this. This is a story that sums it up. This is why the driver in question was a multiple world champion.
Okay, so a few years ago, we did, this is 2002 from memory, we did Rally New Zealand. And Rally New Zealand at that time was a very unusual event. The particular types of forest road, it was very smooth, crown and everything else. And we were playing as a manufacturer with active differentials.
Which manufacturer was this?
Just Hyundai for the World Championship. So, and we were doing our damnedest to try and keep up with everybody else on a meager budget, he says. It's too poor to be born. So we would spend quite a lot of effort doing this. And as part of the debrief process, we would always go through all areas of the car. So the drivers at the event were Armin Schwartz, Freddie Loix, and Juha Kankinen. So we would share in the debrief, and we came on to differentials. And Armin was asked first what he thought, and he said, it's really difficult, and I'm struggling with the differential. Car's inconsistent, it understeers, it oversteers, and then Manfred, his co-driver, so they had override within the car. They could adjust that from the co-driver's console. So the comment was, the car is inconsistent, and we're actually missing some pace notes because he's spending so much time fiddling with the knobs to adjust it, he's missing the notes. So then we asked Freddie, and Freddie commented the same. So I'm just the same as Sven's, faffing around with the switches, and we're struggling to get the car to turn and all the rest of it. So then we look to Juha and say, Juha, what do you think? And he just sits back in his chair, looks at everybody as cool as he could be. And without doing my crass Juha impression, he goes, boys, I'm a rally driver, 4 times champion. When you drive a rally car, watch the road, hold the steering wheel, look at pedals, drive the stage, stop effing with the switches and drive it. and it kind of finished there and then. We look around the table, no engineers had any more comments. It's like, well, let's talk about suspension next then, shall we? What more could you say?
Drew. Mark Busfield, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Backseat Driver Radio Show. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
Rarely beaten on price, never beaten on service. Whether it's cars, bikes or commercials, Hoddy Tyres are the best in the business. And when it comes to tyre expertise and advice to supplying the correct tyres for your vehicle's specific requirements, nobody comes close to David Lakin and the Hoddy Tyres team. So give them a call on 01200 613 192 or visit the website at hoddytyres.co.uk.